In order to get permission to use the theme from Jaws in the film Swingers, the filmmakers screened this movie Swingers for director Steven Spielberg's approval. And not only did Stevie Boy allow them to use this scary shark tune, but that legendary director knew that he had to work with whoever was playing Trent Walker. And he did just that when he cast Vince Vaughn in that Jurassic Park sequel. Spielberg instantly knew that Vince Vaughn was superstar material, and he was correctomundo. Over the last 30 years, Mr. Vince has given us some of the best comedic performances mixed in with some of the most bone-chilling anti-heroes to ever grace the silver screen. But it does seem in the past few years that Vince Vaughn has slowed down his output to focus on smaller roles in more meaningful projects. Is this a good thing? Or is this a bad thing? Or is this just a thing? It's time we look at just what the f*** happened to Vince Vaughn.
Fucking protection for you? Cause you're grown up and you're grown up and you're grown up.
But to truly understand what the f*** happened to Vince Vaughn, we must begin at the beginning of the beginning began when he was born on his birthday, 1970, Minnesota, before moving to a suburb of Illinois near Chicago. Young Vince Vaughn would land guest roles on the ABC Vietnam-based show China Beach and 21 Jump Street before landing roles on several after-school specials, including one opposite a Christmas Story star, Peter Fudging Billingsley, who Vince became friends with. And I think he helped produce that Christmas Story sequel, right? Am I right? Sometimes I'm right. But it would be his first credited role that would forever change his life, when he was cast in the movie Rudy, opposite Sean Astin, and an up-and-coming actor named Jon Favreau. They all became buddies, especially Favreau and Vaughn, who immediately hit it off on set, and would remain friends as they all continued to find their footing in Hollywood. For Vaughn, that footing would see him continue to struggle finding roles. In 1994, there was a film called At Risk, followed by a direct-to-video film called Just Your Luck, before he landed a guest spot on Doogie Howser, MD. But his pal Jon Favreau was having a bit of a better time finding acting work. But as we all know now, Favreau's true desire was to craft his own stories, which he did when he wrote the screenplay for Swingers in just 2 weeks. The story of Swingers was a more fictionalized version of his struggle for success in Hollywood, and of course that script was written with the intention of casting himself and his pals, Ron Livingston and Vince Vaughn, in it, even though the studio wanted A-list actors for the roles. But Favreau stuck to his guns and demanded that his nobody friends be hired. And thank God he did, because after finding director LIman, who was actually able to secure funding for the film, they were able to craft one of the best buddy comedies ever made. That is considered by many to be one of the films responsible for the independent boom of the 90s, and one of the most quotable films of all time. Some would say Swingers was so money it didn't even know how money it was.
Mike, I'm telling you, your money.
You're so fucking money.
All right, I want you to go over to that girl and I want you to get those digits.
Your money.
Come here.
Speaking of money, the film was a moderate financial success, but it would earn rave reviews for the performances, which would allow Vince Vaughn to truly kick off his acting career into high gear. So, as you know, first up, he would appear in that highly anticipated follow-up to Jurassic Park called The Lost World in 1997, which was probably the first time I ever saw Vince Vaughn, and I instantly accepted him as a serious hero-type character who could make funny jokes and get stuff done, which is, you know, what he does. And this was before appearing in the semi-controversial film The Locusts. By 1998, Vince Vaughn would continue to kick his indie cred into high gear by starring in a little scene film called Return to Paradise opposite the late Anne Heche and the great Joaquin Phoenix, whom he again would star with in director David Dobkin's film Clay Pigeons.
You crossed the line with me, boy.
By the end of 1998, Vince Vaughn was an indie darling and a leading man, landing the highly coveted role of Norman Bates in Gus Van Sant's controversial kind of shot-for-shot remake of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Of course, because it's a in-color kind of shot-for-shot remake of Psycho, the film would be divisive, with many saying Psycho is simply one film you should never remake. And many people would go on to say that they felt Vince Vaughn was horribly miscast. But was it the end of his career? No. Despite all the psychotic Psycho stuff, his star would continue to rise. Vince Vaughn would appear on The Larry Sanders Show, Sex and the City, and the film South of Heaven, West of Hell. And he would host Saturday Night Live, before starring in one of the most underrated movies ever made, The Cell. This film is a dark, sci-fi, psychological thriller, and it's a genuine mind-F of a movie, with Vince Vaughn playing the lead detective. The film did not receive the best of reviews because, you know, the critics were wrong. Vince Vaughn would take on producer duties alongside his pals, Jon Favreau and Peter Billingsley, for Jon Favreau's directorial debut, Made. That's right, Jon Favreau made Made, which many thought was a sequel to Swingers, but it's actually a fully original story about two bumbling friends who get involved in money laundering. And although the film Made does not hold the same cult status as Swingers, it's still a solid comedic flick that shows how great Vince Vaughn is at fast-talking, very dry comedic roles.
You could have picked up a f***ing tab once in a while. I paid for half the f***ing drink.
Vaughn would close out 2001 by taking a cameo in Ben Stiller's Zoolander, before heading back down his dark character's path with another underappreciated film called Domestic Disturbance, alongside John Travolta and Steve Buscemi. And yeah, it's a kind of scary, interesting film, but there was actually more scary, interesting things happening behind the scenes. There was a famous story that came out, is that one night after work, Vince Vaughn, alongside screenwriter Scott Rosenberg and co-star Steve Buscemi, went to a local bar where a local drunk maniac instigated a fight with the enormous Vince Vaughn, which resulted in Steve Buscemi getting slashed in the face because he tried to break it up, because Steve Buscemi's a hero. But yeah, Vince Vaughn, Steve Buscemi bar fight, we all kind of wish we were there. Then in 2003, something happened. It seemed that the trajectory of Vince Vaughn's career changed. He had made his career in the comedy Swingers, but seemed to instantly step away from that in the immediate aftermath. A movie was released that showed just what type of genuine comedic force Vince Vaughn truly is. The film was called Old School, creating what became known as the Frat Pack, which was a group of highly successful comedic actors who can all somehow be connected to Old School. And as we know, they changed the way comedy films were made for years, for better or worse. But yeah, Vince Vaughn was kind of like the head of the Frat Pack. After appearing in the indie films I Love Your Work and Blackball, Vaughn would have a 3-year stretch that turned him from great comedic actor to a genuine legend of the genre. First, he would star as the bad guy to Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson in Starsky and Hutch, in his Old School director Todd Phillips' big screen remake that turned out to be a massive hit, with 170 million made worldwide. He would follow that up by playing the average Joe in the comedy classic Dodgeball, where his dry wit was on full display. And this wacky film, Dodgeball, had the opportunity to go off the rails with all these crazy characters in it, but it was Vince Vaughn's character who was the anchor that makes this film work so well. And just in case you thought Dodgeball was the only now classic comedy Vince Vaughn appeared in that year, he would also show up in an uncredited role in Will Ferrell's Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy,
I hate you, Ron Burgundy. I hate you.
He would close out 2004 by appearing in the Mel Gibson-produced film Paparazzi, before launching into 2005 in the independent film Thumbsucker, and reuniting with John Travolta for the Get Shorty follow-up Be Cool, where Vince was able to show his character actor skills by playing a decidedly against-type record producer, which he did so well that the Teen Choice Awards nominated him for Choice Movie Sleazebag. Vince Vaughn would have one hell of a summer in 2005, appearing as the comedic sidekick to Brad Pitt's Hitman in the nearly $500 million grossing Mr. and Mrs. Smith, before starring in one of the best comedic films ever made, Wedding Crashers. It's almost the perfect comedy, almost, equal parts hilarious and heartfelt, and Vaughn alongside Owen Wilson would win the MTV Movie Award for Best On-Screen Team. And this funny rated R comedy would earn a massive $288.5 million off a $40 million budget. Ooh. 2006 would see Vince Vaughn pair up with Jennifer Aniston for one of those romantic comedies. This one was called The Breakup, and would prove to be a massive success with audiences and would take in over $200 million, proving that Vince Vaughn is not the type of performer that needs the spotlight. He would then take a smaller, more dramatic role in the Sean Penn-directed film Into the Wild. Then, for some reason, Vince Vaughn really got the Christmas spirit and would make 2 Christmas movies in a row. First was the comedy Fred Claus, where he played Santa's less successful brother. This movie, Fred Claus, cost a reported $100 million and was only able to make back $97 million, proving to be Vince Vaughn's first outright bomb. Although, nowadays, many people have added this movie Fred Claus into their yearly Christmas rotation of movie watching, because it's a Christmas movie. Is it a top 10 Christmas movie? No, not at all, but it's still a decent one. Kind of fun for the whole family. Speaking of family Christmas movies, Vince Vaughn would then star alongside Reese Witherspoon in the critically panned film Four Christmases, that pulled in some decent box office, but was mostly called a joyless Christmas movie. Perhaps some of that joylessness was because during filming it, it was reported that Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon simply did not get along, with one source saying that Vince Vaughn's style of ad-libbing scenes would clash with Reese Witherspoon's more by-the-book style. Some reports even claim that Reese Witherspoon hated working with Vince Vaughn so much that she refused to have a sex scene with him.
Words excited about this. Oh! Oh, goodness!
In 2009, Vince Vaughn would collaborate with Jon Favreau again on a script for Couples Retreat. The film did not receive great reviews, but the late great film critic Roger Ebert, the guy with the thumbs, did praise Vince Vaughn's performance, while audiences did enjoy the island getaway with just over $170 million grossed worldwide on a $60 million budget. But unfortunately, Couples Retreat would be Vince Vaughn's last big hit for years, as he would next star and produce in the Ron Howard-directed film The Dilemma, which completely tanked at the box office. Nobody even remembers this movie. At least I don't. He would follow that up by narrating and producing The Art of Conflict, before starring alongside his old pal Ben Stiller in The Watch, which is actually a kind of funny story about an alien invasion, with a decent cast, but it did have the unfortunate timing of being released shortly after the shooting death of Trayvon Martin, which was a tragic, controversial story that was all over the news. And one of the buzzwords or phrases of this controversial story was Neighborhood Watch. And Neighborhood Watch was this movie's original title. So due to the controversy, the film suddenly became The Watch, and it never really seemed to recover. Many blame the confusing last-minute title change.
Whoa! Jesus!
He would next appear in the gambling film Lay the Favorite, which was yet another massive box office bomb. In need of a hit, Vince Vaughn would see a 60-minute story about the work culture at Google, and would take the idea to director Shawn Levy, who would agree to produce and direct the film The Internship. The film is actually really funny. Well, actually, let me correct that. The unrated cut released on home video is actually really funny. But for some reason, the studio decided to tame this one down to a PG-13 for its theatrical release, and it would ultimately fail to hit the same highs as Wedding Crashers, with many critics calling it a 2-hour commercial for Google. Vaughn would pop up in A Case for You in 2013 before appearing in a few more box office duds, including Delivery Man and Unfinished Business, before again switching up the way he does things, because he was cast in Season 2 of True Detective, a brutal, gritty, violent, dark masterpiece that reminded us all that Vince Vaughn is not just a silly man and can do very dark material and do it like a frickin' professional very frickin' well. In 2016, he would produce and star in the action film Term Life for director Peter Fudging Billingsley. Although that movie did not light up the box office and was quickly forgotten, it showed a different side to the star that seemed to have been forgotten. Like, people forgot that Vince Vaughn is a badass. But Mel Gibson didn't forget. Mel Gibson would actually bring more of that side out of Vince Vaughn when he would cast him in the Oscar-nominated Hacka Ridge. Mr. Mel Gibson knew that Vince Vaughn would bring some of his humor to this very dark World War II film, while also still being believable as an authority figure on the battlefield. He's like funny in a threatening kind of way in this one, and it's frickin' perfect. At first you're like, what is Vince Vaughn doing in this movie? And then you're like, wow, this is great casting. But it would be master filmmaker S. Craig Zahler who truly saw something in Vince Vaughn when he took a chance on this actor and cast him as a down-on-his-luck man who takes a job transporting meth in a brilliant, brutal flick called Brawl Cellblock 99. And yeah, when the job goes wrong, Vince Vaughn's character is sentenced to 7 years in prison, where he just beats the fucking shit out of everybody. This movie showed us a very different Vince Vaughn. It took the underlining darkness from all of his roles, including Psycho, and rolled them all into one character who was full of nothing but rage and willing to do whatever it takes to save his unborn baby and his baby mama. But this film, Brawl Cellblock 99, it also shows the evolution, the maturation of Vince Vaughn as an actor. Like in Psycho, which is a similar dark role, people felt like he was miscast. People just didn't want to see his dark side. But then, nearly 20 years later, Vince Vaughn plays one of the ultimate badasses to ever grace, that silver screen. And everyone who saw this movie embraced the dark side of Vince Vaughn and frickin' loved it, if you like that stuff. The Saturn Awards would agree when they nominated Vince Vaughn for Best Actor. And he even kinda got some Oscar buzz, but the movie's kinda too controversial and dark to really get the Academy's attention. But yeah, most of all, it showed that Vince Vaughn could kick some ass. Like, he could seriously beat the tar out of you, and you. The director, S. Craig Zahler, really uses Vince Vaughn's height and massive size as a frickin' weapon in this one. He is a weapon. Proving S. Craig Zahler knew he had a great thing with Vince Vaughn, the The two of them would team up again for the film Dragged Across Concrete, another brilliant, brutal one, where Vince Vaughn would star alongside opposite his Hacka Ridge director Mel Gibson in this brutal crime thriller, where the pair would play some corrupt cops who have been suspended from the force for dishing out their own brand of justice that may not exactly be seen as politically correct. And yeah, like I said, this is another brilliant, brutal film from Zoller that shows the absolute stellar range of Vince Vaughn. It allows him to be a badass and still allows him to show off his dry wit. So yeah, whether he's playing a corrupt cop, or a man who's not to be f***ed with in prison, or Santa Claus's brother, Vince Vaughn nails it every time. So yeah, in the past few years, Vaughn seems to be fine taking the secondary role in projects that he believes in, like in the 2019 WWE-inspired story, Fighting With My Family, before appearing in the Kristen Stewart-fronted Cyborg. In 2020, Vince Vaughn would show up in a movie called Arkansas, followed by the Purge parody film The Binge, before again earning solid reviews as a girl trapped in a serial killer's body in the quite good comedy slasher film Freaky, which is like a play on Freaky Friday, because body swap movies always work. But this one did.
I felt oddly empowered being in this body.
And yeah, Freaky would have made more money if it wasn't for our dear f***ing leaders who shut the f***ing world down in 2020. So yeah, sadly, this underappreciated gem only made like $18 million at the box office, but it did seem to find a decent audience on home video. Then came the year 2021, and that would see Vince Vaughn appear in the film North Hollywood and Queen Pins, where he proves to still be as charming as ever. But then, Vince Vaughn was seen doing one of the worst things a celebrity can do. He was politely chatting with President Donald Trump. Dun dun dun! Scandalous. And because of this unforgivable sin, he was instantly canceled by all the people and organizations and social media pages that cancel people. But guess what? Nobody seemed to give a crap. No actual real people, thus canceling his cancellation. That's the power of Vince Vaughn. You can't cancel him, baby.
And literally no one cares. No one.
This big, tall, funny man has done what many consider impossible. He can balance the silly with the scary, perfectly existing in sad face movies and happy face movies. And his energy? The energy that Vince Vaughn brings to the screen is unlike anything. Watching him is like drinking a cup of coffee. Like, you feel it. Like, you want to get up and you want to just talk really fast like him, baby. You just want to do it, yeah. That's the worst Vince Vaughn impression ever, but I just had to do it because of his energy. I was feeling it. Baby, money, yeah. But yeah, movies, that's right. He's not done making them. In the next year, he does have a few projects on the radar that we can all look forward to. So you know what? Nobody should give a f*** about what the f*** happened to Vince Vaughn. Because he's so money, he doesn't even know how money he is. That's a quote from Swingers.